let us listen. First, this: God created the heavens and earth, all you see and all you don't see. Earth was a soup of nothingness, a bottomless emptiness, an inky blank blackness. And God's Spirit brooded like a bird above the watery abyss.
And then God spoke, "Light," and light appeared. God saw that light was good and separated light from dark. And God named the light day and the dark night.
It was evening, it was morning, day one. Then
God spoke, "Sky," in the middle of the waters, separate water from water.
and God made sky. God separated the water under the sky from the water above the sky, and there it was. And God named the sky heaven. It was evening. It was morning. Day two.
God spoke, "Separate water beneath heaven, gather into one place, land appear."
And there it was. God named the land earth, and the pooled water ocean. And God saw that it was good.
God spoke, "Earth, green up, grow all varieties of seed-bearing plants and fruit-bearing tree."
There it was. Earth produced green, seed-bearing plants and fruit-bearing trees of all sorts. And God saw that it was good. It was evening, it was morning, day three.
God spoke, "Lights, come out, shine in heaven's sky, separate day from night, mark seasons and days and years, be stars, lights in the heaven sky."
And there it was. God made two big lights, the larger to take charge of the day and the smaller to be in charge of the night. And then God placed stars in the night sky in order to give light to the heavens. And God saw that it was good. It was evening, it was morning, day four.
God spoke, "Swarm, ocean, with fish and all sea life, birds, fill the sky."
And God created the huge whales and all the swarm of life in the waters and every kind and species of flying birds that fill the sky. And God saw that it was good.
God blessed them, "Prosper, reproduce, fill the ocean, fill all of the earth."
It was evening. It was morning. Day five.
God spoke, "Earth, generate life, every sort of and kind, cattle and reptiles and wild animals, all kinds."
And there they were, wild animals of every kind, cattle of all kinds, every sort of reptile, every bug that creeped and crawled upon the earth.
And
God saw that it was good. And finally, God spoke of you and I.
God spoke, "Let us make human beings in our image. Let us make them reflecting our nature, so they can be responsible for the fish in the sea and the birds in the air and the cattle and indeed all of the earth itself. Make them be good stewards of every living thing that moves on the face of the earth."
And so, God created you and I, human beings. God created us in order that we would reflect God's nature. God created both male and female. Both were made in God's image.
Wait a minute. Let's hear that again, shall we?
God created both male and female. Both were made in God's image.
And God blessed them and said, "Prosper, reproduce, fill the earth, be good caretakers. Be responsible for the fish in the sea and the birds in the air, for every living thing that moves on the face of the earth. I've given you every sort of seed-bearing plant on earth and every kind of fruit-bearing tree. I've given them all to you for food. To all animals and all birds, everything that moves and breathes, I give whatever grows out of the ground for food."
And there it was, all of creation. And God looked over all creation, and it was so good, so very, very good. It was evening, it was a morning, day six. By the seventh day, God was finished. And so on the seventh day, God rested and blessed the seventh day. God made this day a holy day. God, a day set apart from all others.
Because on that day, God stopped. God stopped working and rested.
And as
And
God looked out at all of creation, God indeed marveled at the majesty and wonder that had come from all that good work.
This is the story of how it all started, of heaven and earth and you and I and every living creature on this earth.
This is how we began. And all the people said, thank you, Cindy. I was talking to Audrey the other day about a movie. Sorry, I hear you. See, I caught you talking to your Billy. You can't do that. And I was talking about a movie that I cried at. And she said, well, I don't want to go to that because I don't want to go to a movie I cry at. I don't want to go to a sad movie. And I was thinking about it. As I get older, I don't know about you, but I find myself tearing up more often. My heart's just quite a bit softer. And it's not just, Audrey, because there's something sad in the movie. Actually, that's not all that I cry at. By the way, Emerson loves to watch me watch a movie because she laughs at me when I start crying. Comes from somebody else I know right here. Anyway, so it's not just the sad parts. I find myself weeping at beautiful parts. When the movie speaks an amazing and deep truth, that's when I find myself weeping the most. I was, so Cindy and I went to New York and we got a chance to go on Broadway and see a play. And we saw Hell's Kitchen, a beautiful, amazing musical. It's Alicia Keys. She wrote it all. And it's her, kind of based on her main story of how she grew up in Hell's Kitchen in Brooklyn and some of the tough stuff she went through. But it is, I just have to say, of all the creations that America has made, the American musical is one of the greatest creations we've ever put together. I mean, they're always so good. And this one, I'm not kidding you, I think might be the best one I've ever seen. It's just absolutely beautiful. And in one of the moments, there is a tragedy that happens. Alicia Keys' boyfriend doesn't die, but he ends up being put in prison. And she's very angry and unjustly put in prison. And she's just terribly angry. And she's been taking piano lessons from this kind of old saint. And this old saint, so she comes into her piano session just mad as a hatter. And she says, well, I can't play. I'm so mad. I just can't do it. I don't even want to play music anymore. And this saint of a woman, she says, no! You take that anger and you put it into your music. You place that into your music and you use that music to take that anger and make something good out of it. And that moment for me was just bawling because it was such an amazing, beautiful truth. And I got to thinking about this a little bit as I was thinking about creation. We have a way sometimes of losing ourselves, right? And I do believe the way we find ourselves is through creation. Whether it's going to a play where somebody who's written it and shaped and wrote a new story and getting ourselves into it, or being in a play, or being in a choir, on today's choir, the way we find ourselves, where we remind ourselves of who we are, is by getting in touch with God as creator. And by the way, anytime God is creating, anytime we are creating something good, God's in the midst of that. And so I'm encouraged by that. We've lived through a tough time. Let's face it, we just had terrible news yesterday. I mean, we're in trouble here. We're struggling, right? As a people, as a country, We've been just through it. It reminds me of a story of a little parakeet I read about one time. This parakeet, the owner was on the phone, and she had one of those canister vacuums, and she was cleaning out Chippy's cage, and she wasn't paying attention. And so she's talking away, and all of a sudden, whoop, she hears this noise, and she says, "Oh my gosh, it's Chippy." So she gets into their bag there, and she opens it up and rips it open, and there's Chippy, just full of dirt, but still alive, you know. And so she can't believe how dirty she is. So she gets Chippy, and she takes him to the sink and just pours all this water over him, and poor Chippy is just like drenched. And then she sees that, and she says, "Oh, I got to do something else." So she gets out her blow dryer and starts getting that going on Chippy. And so this gets in the paper, and so somebody writes a story about Chippy and this bird, and so he asks her, the reporter, "Well, how is Chippy doing now?" And she says, "Well, oh man, he's doing pretty good, but he doesn't sing anymore," right? And I do think, in some ways, our country has forgot how to sing. You know, we've lost our way a little bit. And I do believe as our church continues to find its way out of the pandemic, out of whatever we've been through, it's been so many different things. One of the things we need to do is reconnect with creation, whatever it might be, even the process of creation. By the way, worship is a creation. It's a process. It's our work. It's good work. And so getting connected to that again. Brad Carpenter, Connie's brother, came and shared. It was a great event. Thank you, Connie. Let's give her a hand for putting that event together. But Brad was a policeman for much of his life, undercover, covert operator, and he struggled with how to get rid of all that anxiety and all the stress and the terrible things he had seen. You know, he said normally you and I might encounter in our lifetime 3 major, incidents of violence. And he said most police officers maybe 230 in their career. What do you do with all that stress? And so Brad was struggling with that, and a lot of the police officers still do. And what he found that gave him healing, that helped renew him, that took away some of that anxiety, was surfing, right? I mean, getting in those big waves, he said, that was just so great for him, just to get lost in the sound of that surfing, in God's creation, right? Getting lost in the midst of that. Such a beautiful thing. I named this sermon 95 Reasons because in 1417, there was a young priest. By the way, we were all Catholics back then. There was no other church. So a priest of the church who was so upset with the church that he posted on the door of Wittenberg 95 protests and kind of reasons why we should change. Do you know who that was? All right, way to go. Martin Luther. There you go. Martin Luther did that. But there's another guy, another priest in 2010 who I just love. His name is Father Fox, Matthew Fox, Dr. Father Matthew Fox. And he was so upset with what the church was, not just what the church was doing, but where we were going as a church, that he posted this up in the Vatican on a door, 95 reasons or theses. And most of what Matthew Fox talks about is how we as a people, as a church, not just the Catholic Church, but all of us, that so much of our theology starts not with the first of Genesis 1, but it starts instead with Adam and Eve and the fall and the darkness. And so our story tends to start, we're sinners, we're fallen, we're broken. And it starts with that kind of language. And he's saying, no, we're not we got to stop talking about original sin and start reclaiming original blessing. Because the beginning of the story starts with what? And God said we were good. It was good. And I think for me, I tend to lose my way in this world when I feel like Chippy. And when I feel like Chippy, I tend to go back to what I was grew up in. And I try to find my message in the church, and the original message that I had was that original sin. And I think it's marked me in some deep ways, and it's actually marked our culture in deep ways. I remember one time I took a group of women, we were having a study about creation, and I took a big mirror out, and I had them look at themselves in the mirror for a minute. That was hard for them anyway. They didn't want to look for a minute. They kept saying, is it over yet? Each one of them had to look at that mirror for a minute. And then at the end, they had to say, I am wonderfully made. Hardly any of them could say that. They had the hardest time saying that because they wanted to say, I am wonderfully made, but I've got like for me, I got hair on my knuckles, but I've got a wart on my thumb that I can't get rid of. But, right? We've got all those exceptions. And when Chippy's going strong, when we've been through it all those exceptions become the reality for us. And so I want to encourage you this whole season of creation here to think about those words. God says them 6 times. It was good. And on the 6th time, God says, you are so good, so very, very good. How can we get that message to our children and our grandchildren? Kind of easier to do the grandchildren, I'm just going to say. But parents, it's a little tougher. But even in the bad times, even when they're just at their worst, we can still find something to celebrate. And I want you to know how much you mean to me. So there's a couple things we in the church have the power to create, right? We don't have much power over a lot of things, but you do have power over yourself. You can create you. God created you. You're part of this co-creation, right? And so where are you moving and shaping and forming? They say every 36 hours, most of our cells transform into something new, right? We're a new person. About every day, our cells are different. How can we create ourselves new again? I just talked to too many people that have given up already. Quit trying to be better. Quit trying to recreate and take your life in a new way. We just settle in. We're chippies. We settle into the dirt and the water. How can we create our own lives with God's help in a new way? And then the second thing we have all the power in the world to do is create this place, this church. This is not something we're stuck in. We can recreate it. We can move chairs around. We can get a new music person. We can do all sorts of things. This is a community. Before I went to New York, and after I went to the Pride Parade, I went to a church camp for a little bit, an elementary church camp. You might have read my article about it. But what does church camp give us? They're so good at community. We get away from it all, and we get to take kids who've maybe been beat up a bit, gone through some stuff, and we get to share the good news to them that they are good, that they are great, and we can do great things together. And let me tell you, even 3 days and 2 nights of camp, singing silly songs, coming together at a campfire can change these kids and even old guys like me, right? That's what we're called to do here. Every Sunday morning is a camp, if you could imagine. It's a camp where we try to bring people in from all sorts of parts of the world and going through all sorts of things, and our message to them is, you are good. You still have a chance. You can change. You can co-create with us. Can we do that? What do we need to do differently? How can we create community more cohesively here at the church? I think we're kind of good at worship. How can we create community together in new ways? Should we have a retreat, 2 days, 3 days, where we actually all come together and try to get there, and commit to that? Think about it. How could we create this community in a new way? And I leave that all to you, because this is what God has given us, each of our lives and this community. We can do anything we want to. And all the people said, amen.